Well, Paul, whenever you want to get
Yeah,
started.
welcome. Yeah, let's go ahead.
Yeah,
We
we
can
got a good group.
still got people coming in, but we'll get going. If you're just coming in, we're kind of trying to go as interactive as we can. You got the chat panels open. Let us know, who you are, what you're doing, where you're focused on. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Let's jump to the next slide. So today's webinar is from conversation to conversion, why conversational engagement is your quickest route to AI. I'll do a quick introduction onto the series. So this is part of our webinar series for the Institute. We do 1 to 2 of these a month with our partners. So today we've got Drift on board, which is huge and exciting, and they got a ton of interesting stuff going on, including redefining the category as a whole that they're going after. They have this background in conversational marketing, conversational sales, but very focused on this idea of revenue acceleration. And I know David Cancel, the CEO and founder, was sharing some inside information recently, some slides on LinkedIn of how you guys are looking at the past of marketing and where we're going. And Kyle and Mark are with us today. We'll introduce them in a second as well. But they've been working on the conversational blueprint and really trying to advance the industry as a whole. So quick introduction for me. I'm Paul Roetzer, the founder, CEO of Marketing AI Institute. So if you know me maybe from my other gig, I run PR 2020, which is a marketing agency as well. So Mark and I go back years. We've been working together and friends for probably going on 8 to 9 years. And Kyle and I recently got to know each other. Kyle created a course for our AI Academy for marketers. So we're really excited about that. So Mark is the VP of Content and Community, and Kyle is Director of Sales Enablement. So welcome, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know we're all jumping on Zoom meetings and webinars nonstop these days, but appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. And Mark, do you want to give the quick overview again of what you were asking people to do? Because we've got another slug of people have come in. So you were saying switch over to panelists so they can interact more?
Yeah. Please head over to the Zoom chat. Kyle and I are going to try to make this as engaging and interactive, conversation-based as we can. So if you go to the Zoom chat and you also make the change so who can see your message to all panelists and attendees, it's probably set to just all panelists. But we would like to have everyone who's attending interact with one another, ask each other questions, and please ask Kyle and myself questions, push back on us, give us feedback throughout it. Again, trying to make this engaging. And we have a pretty full agenda from the looks of it, but I'd say we're not going to go for full the whole hour. So we've built in time to have these conversations throughout the broadcast today, Paul.
Yeah.
And I just think this is a really interesting topic at a very interesting point in the world today. So we're going to kind of kick it off with that, talking about 2020. We all know what's going on, so we don't have to belabor that, but we want to talk specifically about the acceleration of digital transformation. Kyle, actually, you work with very large enterprise SaaS businesses. You were just on 2 customer calls, you were just telling us, and you're seeing this acceleration firsthand, right?
Yeah, so I work with almost all of our current and future customers that are thinking about and talking through how AI can be leveraged in their digital experience in their web. And often that means chat, but not just chat, but that's what we're talking about. And how can we make those experiences more personal, make those experiences available 24/7, and what role does AI play in all of that? And yeah, I work with a lot of Drift customers on how they've set that up and how they evaluate it. And then once it's live, what does it solve and what does it do and how does that all work? So I'll try to speak from that experience today as we're going through it.
Yeah, so we'll talk about all these things you see on the slide, and we'll try to add in as much color from stories and data we've seen and how Drift is using it as well. And so Kyle, I had to call you out before we go on to the next slide. You did not change your setting in the Zoom chat so all panelists and attendees could see your great comments.
Oh, I see. Oh, panelists. And wow, you gave me the instruction several times. And I was like, yeah, got it. Okay. We're good. Thanks, Mark.
No worries, no worries.
We're even for using by the way, that my profile picture is my Slack profile picture. That's generally not for public consumption. And I'm glad to see you grab. Yeah, that one. That's
I think that's the one we had for your like
yeah,
Macon talk or for Academy.
is it the one? Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad that's out there. Now we're even.
Paul, do you want to kick it off though? Talk a little bit more about the
Yeah.
institute.
So if anybody on the call isn't familiar, so the Marketing AI Institute we created in 2016, spun it into its own business in 2019. And our whole focus is just to make this stuff approachable and actionable. We get that AI is abstract. A lot of people just don't dive into it because it seems overwhelming, or it's for the geeks, it's for the data scientists, and it's not. And so everything we do is focused on trying to simplify this. And with that, we've seen a ton of growth. So again, started as just a blog. We were writing a couple of times a week in 2016 to today, about 20,000 website visitors a month and approaching 18,000 opt-in contacts. We had our initial conference last year. We had 300 attendees from 12 countries come into Cleveland. Obviously, the 2020 conference kind of got put on hold with everything else, but hoping to bring it back in 2021. Just recently announced and launched AI Academy for Marketers, which Kyle has a course in. And then just give you a sense, like, everybody's interested in this. Some of our top industries, tech, professional services, education, finance, manufacturing, healthcare, but we're seeing interest across everywhere. But for a lot of people, they're just trying to understand and figure out where to get started. So for us, the big message, our point of view on all of this is we all accept that AI is going to have this massive effect on not only marketing, but the business world as a whole and the economy. And yet most people are really just at the beginner level stage. And so we try and teach them how to take this information and get started. And so in this webinar series, what we're often trying to do is feature the technologies and the use cases that might be very logical points for marketers to explore AI and find ways to do things more efficiently. And when we think about a use case, and when you want to think about ways you might be able to use AI, think about all the things you do that are data-driven, repetitive, and where you're trying to make a prediction about something, whether it's a behavior, an upcoming action, intent. And when you step back as a marketer and think about all the times you're subconsciously making a prediction, from subject line writing to what someone's going to ask on a chatbot, you're constantly using instinct to do this. AI can be trained to help you. And that's what Mark and Kyle are going to kind of walk you through today, is conversational marketing, conversational sales, and revenue acceleration categorically, all the ways we can think about AI. So I'm going to duck off video for now and let Mark and Kyle do their thing.
Thanks, Paul. I love that. Love the framing of how you can think about AI and how you should be thinking about AI. And AI can be very actionable. And that's what Kyle and I are going to go through now. Really, at the end of the day, what we've seen artificial intelligence help our customers do is really kind of two things. One is make a better customer experience. And that's both from like the customer's point of view, but also from the marketers and salesperson's point of view. So it's bringing them together faster. It's creating those connections, those interactions faster. And this, on the flip side, it's giving the marketer and the salesperson deeper insights into the customer and the journey and how they can change their behaviors, their selling motion behaviors, how they present content, how they create engagement at the different journey points in the life cycle. So we'll get into all that. But Kyle, we want to kick it off with this 2020, shift that's happened and how you're seeing digital transformation play out. So you found this interesting stat. I thought this was super interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And like, what I think is even more interesting is, well, so first of all, like all of this, shelter in place and remote work that has been brought about by COVID is 5 months old at this point. It feels like it's 5 years old at this point. But I want to go back to as recently as March of this year. And studies were saying that steak dinners and on-sites and trade shows and events were viewed in the B2B space as more beneficial ways to evaluate and buy from businesses than digital experiences. That seems crazy today, right? But that was only 5 months ago that was still the prevailing opinion. And now I know, Paul, the work you've been doing, I think we'd have a very different point of view on that. For all of my digital marketers, on the panel, or I'm sorry, on the webinar, you would, think very differently about that. Drift's entire company is premised on digital being more important. But the reality that digital is the way that buyers want to buy today is now inescapable. And a lot of these channels have been closed off, not just for us as sellers. And we think about that as like, oh, I don't get pipeline for my trade shows anymore. But from buyers who appreciated, the opportunity to meet and talk face to face with the people that they plan to do business with, and in some cases make some sizable investments with. And that's gone from them too. And so, you talk about two things that AI is really great at from the business standpoint. From the consumer standpoint, it's critical as well. Because there's certain, like experiences they want to have and expect when they come to your website that are very difficult to deliver with the individuals that you have working there on their own. So yeah, this has just been a kind of fascinating time where people who, said, oh, we'll make our business digital first over the next 3 years. Well, that became a 3-month project. And I'm hearing that again and again in the people that we're talking to.
Yeah, so let's play the game, Kyle. Everyone go over to that chat. So this is coming from Twilio. This is just released about less than a month ago. The link is in the slides. You got to look at the study from Twilio. It's fascinating data from enterprise businesses around the globe. 97% of these companies that they surveyed reported that COVID has sped up their digital transformation, to your point, Kyle, by how many years? What do you think? What do you think, folks? How many years? Just throw out a number. Throw out a number. What do we got? I'm not going to ask you, Kyle, because you know the answer.
I've seen the slides. It'd be cheating.
Tamara says 10. Jessica, 10.
Jessica's on 10.
Yep, 10 is a pretty common one. Any other guesses? 6. 6 years. So basically, all of these businesses, hundreds of businesses surveyed, enterprise-grade businesses, 28. Yep, definitely. Yeah, so these are good guesses. I mean, Kyle, what do you make of that? Like, what do you make of this acceleration? And like, what's a story you've heard recently from one of these businesses that you've been working with, and like, what are they struggling with? What are some of their pains?
Yeah, so I think there's a few dimensions to look at that, but I'll start with just like digital marketers, right? So people who have been living in, creating digital experiences and demand generation on the web, like invented effectively the MQL, what 5 years ago? I mean, when I was early in my sales career, no one talked about MQLs. It wasn't a thing, right? Like until, maybe 2015 was MQL ever part of the lexicon at any company I worked at. And once MQLs became the thing, for the digital marketers, about creating them and passing them to sales. And that was where the handoff was. It was at the lead stage. What is implied by this acceleration of digital transformation is that the marketer can't pass things over at lead anymore, right? They can't even pass it over at like sales qualified lead. The marketers I'm talking to today, like I had a CMO at a large multinational insurance company last week say, all I care about is revenue. And I wasn't hearing CMOs talk like that a year ago, right? The things were around, experience or branding or lead generation or interest, but I didn't hear so much revenue ownership in the marketing department, prior to this acceleration. And then on the sales side, we have field sales reps who are often assigned the strategic accounts of these businesses. And they're the ones that are responsible for bringing in the largest and most well-known logos for any individual company. And they operate in the field. And they're the ones who are visiting them. They have a milk run, right? And they go to these various businesses. They never are in the office. They hardly will log anything in Salesforce, let alone participate in digital conversations online. And a lot of businesses are thinking like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do with these folks now, right? Because everything that they're doing to land my biggest customers is irrelevant. And how do I bring my sales team onto the website? And how do I get more direct participation in the digital experience with some of our more seasoned and experienced sales individuals? And that's just not their bag. I mean, like that's not the tool set that they're necessarily equipped with. And so marketers are figuring out how to go down funnel, and salespeople are trying to meet in the middle. And you're just seeing the line get really blurry as to like where marketing ends and where sales begins, particularly in digital experiences.
Yeah, very well said. That's a great example. A couple of great examples there. And this is what we have recently come out with, where look, to your point, Kyle, we've seen this shift happen in 5 months now, but it's really been happening over the last, say five years at least, where you're at this tail end of this era of really focusing on leads, right? And like, that's how marketing's measured. And we've been talking about marketing and sales alignment for the last 5, 10, 15 years. But now it's like, how do the two teams act together to drive revenue? And that's now this new era. Whereas like using things like artificial intelligence, the marketing, sales team, even customer success team can become the revenue team and can bring these interactions that are now going to be more so in the future, almost all digitally based, right? In bringing, like you said, like the salespeople to the website to meet the customer where they are. And I think what we're getting at is this is proven out from a customer's viewpoint as well. Like, it's been said in the past, customers are the center of everything. You're gonna put the customer at the center of everything. Now we're saying you're gonna put the revenue at the center of everything too, but there's a way to bring both things at the center, the customer and the revenue, and not make them be in conflict. And that's what we're gonna teach you folks, hopefully today, some ways to do that. But here are some stats, Kyle, that actually show from a customer's perspective what they expect and what they want now. Any of these really surprise you, or any things you can think of from like what you're again hearing from customers?
Yeah, so I talk a lot about these numbers, particularly with customers, and it's usually the middle one that people find most surprising. And the customers expect a response within 5 seconds or less with a chatbot. What's interesting about that is that, chat as a technology is not new, right? It's been existing in the support world for 20 years. And a lot of people have that as like the baseline of their experience with chat, where if you're a customer and you're stuck doing something with a certain product and you have to chat into support, you're stuck, like you're sticky, and there's nowhere else you can go to get that information. And so the kind of SLAs, wait times, and things that you might see in a support chat world where like 5 minutes is acceptable, where emailing you back in a couple hours is acceptable, or at least standard. People think that's going to apply in sales and marketing chat as well. But when someone's on a website and they're on a pricing page and they want to know if something's going to integrate with their environment before they even give an email address or care to talk to a salesperson, they've got the entire internet at their fingertips and no attention span for that. And so we actually see every 10 seconds that it takes to get a response on chat for sales and marketing, 10% of people abandon the chat. It's roughly as long as you would expect a phone to ring if you were to call a business. And like, that's how fast you have to be. And so in chat, you can't, it's like, oh, if 2 minutes is cool in customer support, it is, 1 minute and 55 seconds too long in sales and marketing. And the implication of that metric usually catches people off guard.
Love that. And folks, we will send the slides out. It looks like Paul shared that in the chat. The reason I say that again is like Salesforce has another great report that we link to in these slides around, again, just expectations of speed and the ability to connect in real time with another human, or even, we'll talk about this, Kyle, it could just even be finding the right website page that's part of your 500 or 1,000 plus page website that someone wants to do in a couple seconds. They don't want to be spending 30 seconds trying to find a website page anymore or a piece of content. So let's keep going. And actually that kind of leads us into this next piece, which is, okay, now you have to fully embrace the digital side of how you communicate with customers, how you build relationships, because the steak dinners, the live events, all of these things are gone and are going to be changed for maybe the better, you could say, but definitely going to be changed in the future. You're not going to probably go back to what we were doing. Omni-channel engagement, we should talk about that because we're mentioning chat now, but there's really 4 or 5 things we as people use every day to communicate, and we want to talk about those things because all of those things AI should be part of. And then there's this real-time notion we're going to get into. You just mentioned that. And then how do you personalize it? How do you get someone to the next best action or next best thing for them, depending on who they are and where they are in their journey, based off of this really big website you have as well, though. Like your website is kind of like hurting your ability to do that. So how are you guiding someone to that experience? But Kyle, I want to ask you this. How many messaging services do you use in your personal life every day? And folks, I want you to chime in too in the chat. So messaging services or chat services. I'll give you a couple examples. Slack is one, and like
Yep.
WhatsApp is one. But how many do you use?
So
Every day?
I mean, this morning have used Slack, text, and Facebook Messenger. In the last 90 minutes, I've used all three of those.
Okay. So how many? So 3 in 90 minutes. How many do you use typically every day? Do you think? What do you think?
I mean, I use, email, multiple email services. I'm not a big WhatsApp guy, although I have it. I mean, I'm
LinkedIn?
probably LinkedIn. Yeah, that LinkedIn, great call. LinkedIn Messenger, definitely. Probably 5 to 6 a day, I would say.
And that's just messaging services, right? So
Yep.
we got Ryan saying Slack, iMessage, WhatsApp, LinkedIn Messenger. Okay, at least
Zoom
4.
chat, Ryan, call it. Yeah, we're using one right now. Someone's slacking me actually while we're on this. I just had to pause my Slack notifications because I was getting blown up on something while I'm on this webinar. My phone's probably ringing too.
Jessica's the winner right now. Slack, Yammer, text, Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter,
Yeah.
LinkedIn today. Okay,
Totally.
so we're kind of getting to the point of this, right? The point is like everyone is using messaging and chat. And if you don't create this like great experience just with messaging and chat alone, that's going to be a problem. And so the question now becomes is like, how is this scalable? Like, can we as humans accommodate the need for real-time omni-channel engagement? Oh, and by the way, like, what are the other things we use every day, Kyle? I would say, how many people check email, 4 or 5 plus times a day? Probably everyone, right? They check their email a lot. How many people have multiple email addresses or combined multiple email addresses into one? Probably a lot. How many people use a voice-activated type of solution or product every single day? Probably a lot, right? How many people use video every day, right? So if you think about the ways in which we communicate and how we can scale the personalization and real-timeness of that communication, that's what we're getting at now, and that's what we're going to teach you and how to actually do it. So let's start to dive into why AI is the key to scaling your go-to-market strategy. I think this is where it becomes really fascinating. And Kyle, you have this interesting, I would almost call it like a 2x2.
Oh yeah. So again, like I mentioned that the study at the top of this about the importance of digital experiences compared to traditional ones. And it's a McKinsey study, and it rings very true. But if we're talking about like delivering excellent digital experiences, we have to have a North Star. And the North Star are the 3 things that buyers value most in their digital experiences, and it's speed, trust, and helpfulness. Right? So is it believable? Is it credible? Is it helpful? And does it happen right away? And so we can kind of put these traditional ways that businesses have engaged digitally with their site traffic onto this axis of like speed and expertise, or speed and helpful. So forms is obviously like the least fast and least helpful. It's one way you give information and you have to wait for the answer. And so you don't get anything from it, and it takes a long time. So that's forms. Live chat is at least helpful. And then when you get somebody who can engage with you personally and understand what you're looking for and give you answers, that's a helpful experience to the buyer. But it's really, really difficult to operationalize live chat fast. And I've done it. I mean, I in a previous life, worked with a BPO in Lahore, Pakistan that was 20 people strong to try to operationalize 24/7 chat response. And I could never break a minute. 24/7, which is not fast enough. And so, yeah, these are the limitations of live chat, right? You've got, response time, world class is 25 seconds, and that's for a team of individuals that are doing nothing but staffing chat shifts. I've seen them get to 25 seconds, which means you have about 25% attrition in your pipeline, just that handoff point right there. Putting chat all over the website is something the sales team is that's gonna be a negotiation between sales and marketing. And sales, they want hot leads. They want leads coming from the pricing pages and the contact us pages. Marketing wants every page in the sitemap to be conversion ready. So negotiating business coverage is something that we're gonna have to solve if we're gonna use live chat to answer questions. Consistency, the individuals that we put on chat are typically junior level sales and marketing individuals that want to be promoted to full cycle sales as soon as possible. So basically, as soon as they get good, they want a promotion. And in the meantime, you have a largely untrained group with an average turnover of 14 months, according to Topo. So that's the team that's never going to be performing optimally. It's a team that's probably going to cost about 100K per head count a year domestically. And it's a team that's only going to be available, for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And you're going to get tons of traffic. And we actually, within our product, track heat maps of when chats come in. And we can see that 45% typically come outside of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday local business time. So it's hard to do. I mean, you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of calories, to try to operationalize live chat. And it is, in the end, going to be insufficient when it comes to delivering the kinds of experiences that buyers demand.
So what do we do? This is something that like Drift has done really well. A lot of solutions have this. We said live chat is silly because it also provides sometimes really unqualified visitors to talk to your sales team. Then, right? There's all this noise. There's all these problems that you just outlined. So we said, great, we're going to use bots, right? They're going to be very human centric, but be explicitly clear that there's a bot on the website that's going to help engage with the visitor no matter the time, understand a bit more about them, and recommend them down the right path. And that could be talking to a human, or a human could intercept that conversation that site visitors having with the bot and chime right in. But there's still a problem with that type of technology and experience, right, Kyle?
Oh yeah, I mean the problem there is that the bots are only as good as their design, and it's typically for like you'll see a bot that can handle like 4 or 5 use cases, right? Someone who wants to talk to sport, someone who wants more content, someone who wants to talk to sales. People are going to come to a website for 100 different reasons, and a decision tree might be great at asking people questions and giving value propositions, but it's never going to answer questions, and so it's never going to deliver expertise. Right. And if you think about the rule of law, like law of large numbers, if I design a bot that operates on a pricing page for my target accounts, and I might imply that 70% of those visitors are going to want to, get converted and talk to sales team, I might even be right. But I don't know what any one individual is going to want to talk about. I'm never going to be able to predict the wants or desires of any one human. So that's where bots fall down. It might work in aggregate to some extent, but it can't answer questions. It can't deliver expertise. It cannot be personalized to the individual. And so those are the limitations, right? And so AI is threading the needle. And what this is doing is allowing us to, within 2 seconds and 24/7 on a site, deliver truly helpful experiences, answer individual questions, and drive the type of outcomes that are important to the business.
So let's teach everyone how it works and how to do it. Because there's some exciting stuff now to come in the next half an hour. And Paul hits the nail on the head. Like a lot of people think, oh, it's a bot, so there's AI in that bot. Kyle, like how many customers do you talk to? And you're working with Fortune 1000 businesses every single day. How many of those businesses are truly using bots and AI-driven experiences on their website? Like what's a percentage, would you say?
1%. Of all the bot experiences that you see on a website, about 1% are truly AI driven.
Very, very small. So let's go into it. How do you create an amazing experience for each visitor using conversational AI? And again, like this is stuff that I think is going to be the next iteration of websites, because websites are, again, like need to go from being informational to being actionable. Websites for the first 2 eras of that spectrum, well, the first era, brand, there were no websites, right, Kyle? It was just like print, billboards, commercials, etc., right? Then the demand gen era, the website blew up, but it became very informational and slow. Now in the revenue era, the website is actionable and fast. So let's teach people how to do it.
Yes. So we're going to dive into each of these 4 things. So the first is designing the conversation. And that is about basically like, where do we want to go with this? And like, what is I guess, what is the buyer looking to do? And what does the business need to achieve? And it's an exercise of resource mapping. We then classify the intent of the people who want to come to the site. We'll program in or think through like, what is the absolute best way to handle each of these kind of questions that people have? And then what are the questions that we ask back to do kind of like multi-turn chat driven by AI to drive people or deliver the type of experience that people are truly looking for when it's more complex than, one simple Q&A. So I think we're going to dive into each of these in more detail. Yeah.
Yep, we are. And just to be clear, do each of these steps take into account some level of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, each of these steps do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's dive into the first one.
All right. So, Mark, do you want to start with this one? And this is, you had a big role in how we think about designing conversations here at Drift or in general. Yeah.
Yeah. So before the AI does anything, you really have to ask yourself, who's coming to your website? Where are they coming from? So think channel, right? This could be email, this could be paid, this could be display. What page are they on? And what are they engaging with on that page? Is it a specific type of offer? Is it just some content? Are they just browsing? So taking into consideration the who, the where, and the what, the artificial intelligence that Kyle's going to walk you through then is going to create an experience that is most personalized to that particular visitor, depending on where they came from and what they're interacting with. And that's where engage, understand, recommend comes in. And that's the whole point of the classifier, the dialogue manager, and how it responds. It walks you through, you being the website visitor, this experience. And to flip it back to like a non-AI chatbot, normally a human would have to figure out how to best engage given these three high-level parameters, the who, where, and what. A human would have to design the potential ways the chatbot would respond and understand that visitor a bit more. And the human would have to predict how to get that person to the right thing at the right time. So that's a lot to ask a human to do. And that is now the power of AI. And we're going to talk a lot more about then what happens as the data gets collected and the insights you can glean from it. But at a very high level, you first have to like design the flow of the conversation based off of context, intent signals, and information you explicitly or can implicitly gather from the visitor. And then Kyle, the next thing is how do you actually take that information to classify their intent? This gets much deeper now.
Yeah, so now we're talking about like natural language processing fundamentals. And the first thing you need to do is take the human-based chats that you've already had within your business. And the most important thing is that fuel, if you will, like those chat transcriptions is what you're going to use to better understand your buyers, right? And so like, Drift provides this. There's many other ways, many other engines out there that are available that will help you classify and understand the intent. But the way that it works is by basically taking chats and focusing on the customer utterances, right? Like not what your team is saying, but what are the buyers saying? What are the visitors saying? And you're going to break those into like large buckets. And that might be like support inquiry, quote request, demo request, or product information, right? Like what are the major buckets of information or topics that people want to come talk about when they come to the site? And then you'll take a layer deeper and classify sentences and say like, okay, so like within a demo request, what are the various types of questions that people ask? So if you're a B2B software company, you'll have all these pricing questions, and some of them might be pricing around, this plan versus that plan, or platform cost versus seat cost, right? Or month to month versus annual. And these are all types of questions or categories of questions that will exist within the bucket of pricing questions. And then the final thing is about structuring ontology. And this is what I call like understanding the proper nouns of your business. What is the technical language? What are the lexicon? Like, what are the things that are going to have particular meaning within your business and maybe different meaning outside of the context of your business, right? And what are the relationships between those words? This is the difference between keywords and true AI in terms of understanding the relationships between words within a sentence. And often that is the difference between truly understanding meaning, versus like answering a question that was not asked. And so, we have one example of how this works with a simple utterance that we'll see on just about any company's page. And it says like how much for a standard plan, or how much does your platform cost or your company costs. And so that is broken down as the event is a pricing discussion. The actual cluster is ask for a quote. Within that cluster, we may have 40 different ways people have asked this question before. And then the ontology is to map that to something specific to us, like standard plan is a capital S at Drift, right? That's actually a thing that has a specific answer. And so we map that to a business rule, which is the standard plan equals a certain amount. And it is with this information that we're able to provide an accurate answer to this person. And so the first thing is, what do people want to talk about when they come to the site? This is technically how you do it.
Any questions about this before we get into response mapping? Because there's a lot just to unpack on this one slide. As people maybe think of questions, Kyle, this also is where not the majority, but a lot of the learning can continue to happen as part of the AI engine that happens with each of these AI chatbots.
Yeah, this is the first aha moment, right? Because, as a business, you probably see a lot of this stuff anecdotally, but when you're confronted with, here's the 29 different questions that compromise 80% of the stuff people want to talk about when they come to the website, and here's the stack rank order of frequency that these things come up. That is a very powerful insight for marketers, not just through thinking through how do we enhance our chat experiences and our conversion experience, but how do we inform our marketing more generally? And is there a way to get in front of these questions in how we, launch campaigns or deliver press releases or whatever you're doing to get information into the market?
Yeah, Paul has a good question that we'll actually answer at the end of this section around the training of all this. How much does it fall on who? The person implementing it, or on the software, or on like a vendor like Drift? But let's talk about response mapping next. Kyle, walk us through this, please.
Yeah, so there's a variety of places where you're going to be able to get information. Like, let's say we now know these are the top 25 questions people have when they come to the site. Now we want to standardize the factual information that we present back as an answer to those questions. There's ways you can get this from existing chats. You can get this from knowledge bases. You can get this from website. You can ask your sales team, how do we answer this objection? And these are all valuable inputs that you want to use when you're response mapping. Now at Drift, we hard code, we basically like map these in. So, the AI isn't making up responses necessarily. So that this part is human assisted, certainly. And our strong recommendation is that you look at your top reps and use your sales team, right? Like, this is often going to be implemented by marketing. And so there's going to be a strong inclination to answer this, with, marketing approved copy. It is less important that we copyright these answers than we make it conversational. Like, medium matters, and people email differently than they text, differently than they write long form, differently than they read or what have you. So use the actual chat transcripts and say, Haley is one of our top reps in chat. How did Haley answer that question? And let's start there. And that's a great place to get your AI feeling human, and which will drive more interactions as you go forward.
Which then actually brings it all together when you actually understand the motivation then of that person through the AI asking maybe more questions based off of like real human responses it's sending back to the website visitor, and that website visitor responding back. And it starts to then really understand not just like intent, but what is motivating this person at this particular time. So the AI can recommend the best possible thing for them.
Yeah, and this is what really differentiates a great AI-based chat experience from, say, searchable FAQ. And it is what, which have existed in knowledge bases for who knows how long, right? In this case, the example we're showing is when Mark was going through the conversational design, if somebody wants to talk to sales, the idea is about resource mapping, right? And so depending on what business are you, what is the experience, what's the absolute best offer or thing that we can give to help you with what you need to do next. And so imagine that we've had kind of a multi-turn AI-based chat experience, and we get to the point where they say they would like to get some help buying. In one example on the left, we asked how many people work at your company, and they responded, we're a small team, about 12. And that would be perhaps an example of somebody that we can help and we would love to work with us. But it's just not economical to, have them book time on our most expensive field reps calendar. And so we might steer them towards kind of one-to-many or self-service purchase options that will, better map to the complexity of their business and the way that they want to buy, which will likely be more transactional. If somebody is a 1,500 person company that has a 8 to 9 person buying committee, we're going to need to put them in touch with the sales rep who owns that account, who has experience in their industry, and is best equipped to help them with that evaluation. And so these kinds of decisions can be made dynamically based on what we're learning in the AI conversations.
And the key to this example is, again, like chatbots typically that are not AI based make you click a button to respond. It's always like, out of these 3 or 4 or 5 options, click the one that best, is most related to you and your situation. And then the chatbot's going to respond, add some value, and then probably ask you the question. In these cases, in these examples, the person, the website visitor, can type whatever they want. And because of the classifier and understanding the ontology and those other components of the intent piece, it's responding back with a human-like response and understanding that motivation to do exactly what Kyle just said. And now the next question, Kyle, is like, you got this up and running, but like, how far does it go and how does it get better? Which kind of goes to Paul's question around training. So do you want to just briefly talk to us about how does the AI get smarter and what's the difference between getting smarter and training the AI?
Yeah, sure. So getting smarter is basically about like adding more data points, right? And so if say only 2 people have ever asked me about our standard plan, and the third person comes in and asks a flavor of the standard plan question, it's going to be less likely that it's understood than if we have like 40 or 50 different utterances as to how people are examples of how people have asked that question in the past. And what this basically is probabilistic math, right? And so, Mark, if I were to ask you to complete the sentence, right? The dog's breath smells like dog blank. What would you say?
The dog's breath smells like dog's fur.
Fur or food or toy, right? Like, what are things a dog puts in its mouth, right? So It's basically probabilistic. Sure, Ryan, we're all thinking it. And so it's effectively probabilistic math, and it's going off of past examples. Now, you and I understand English, and so we can think of things that we would insert there. And that's very much what the bot is doing. And so when someone shows up and says, can I apply for a job? It's going through the library of previous questions and saying, okay, 90% confident they want to know about career resources. But maybe 5% demo requests and 5% tips for payroll, because people have asked those questions in kind of a weird way. And so we say, I'm going with interested in career resources, and I'm answering as if they asked for more interesting career resources. And so in this case, like, bot got it right. Someone says, how much is pricing, right? Like, that might be a quote request. Someone asked me about an add-on, like, that's a more generic question. That could be a little trickier. So the engine should be thinking through these kinds of things. And so training it is about 2 things: adding more examples and just getting smarter over time as more chats take place and we have more examples. And then also, if the bot or the AI chat sees something vague enough where we're not able to say over a certain confidence threshold that this is what they're looking for, just say, shoot, I don't really know. And then that should, fire an alert to yourself or to the individual, like the technician or the vendor that is operating this on your behalf, to say, hey, let's look at this transcript. Like, tell the bot what the real answer was based off of a human in the loop kind of editing it. And then it'll make it smarter over time. So if it had gotten it wrong in this case, we can just like say, actually, they were looking for a demo request here. And then that'll be recategorized and recognized appropriately the next time.
Love it. All right, so let's talk about some of the impacts, show some examples, and talk more about some real stories. So the impact, Kyle, there's a lot of ways you can look at this performance of AI chat, and what is it doing both from like an engagement standpoint and an outcome standpoint for the business and your customer. So you're saying on this slide, this is what most people look at. Let me ask you this question though. What is something that like the person who's implementing the AI would look at versus like the marketing person versus say like the CRO, CMO? Like how do you break this down, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm trying to be like, there's a lot of things in this slide, but I'm just trying to be telescopic. And so, I'll start at the bottom. At the end of the day, what matters is that this is producing revenues for the business, right? Like, that is the most important thing. Everything else is a KPI, right? And so if it is not driving business outcomes, like more people are buying because you made it easier for them, then none of this matters, right? And so starting back at the top, I'll take you to how you get there. The AI technicians, the people who own the chat experience, need to be thinking about a couple AI specific metrics. And that is the accuracy rate overall. This is like when somebody says something to a playbook or to an AI based chat, did we answer it right? And you want to set a threshold, a benchmark of about 80% to be really, really, commercial quality. The things that'll get you there, like we talked about, is how many questions are in a cluster, how many clusters are supported, basically how many data points or Q&A pairs have you put into your model. And so that's for look, we need to answer the right way in order for this to make a start. The second thing is once we're answering accurately is how well are we deploying this across the site in terms of site coverage, and then going through the kind of waterfall of chat metrics, which is how many people saw it, how many people talked to it, if they talked to it, how many of them created a lead by giving us an email address, and how many meetings were booked. And so what you're optimizing for here is those motivation sets that we talked about, which is the questions that we ask back and the humanity in your answers that lead to better outcomes. And so now we can start once we technically have the technical part down at the beginning, now we can start thinking about the art of it. And that's where the core chat metrics come into play. We've talked about revenue growth and metrics chat influence pipeline, chat influence revenue. The last thing that we commonly see is that the quality of the revenue that comes through AI chat tends to be different. I have one customer that has a 4% engagement rate from lead to paid customer in their entire funnel. If they engage with AI chat at any point before they make their first purchase, they buy at 32%. They're 8 times more likely to buy if they have an AI-based chat experience before they make that purchase. They also buy for 33% more, and they buy 8 days faster. And so those kinds of efficiency metrics speak to lifetime value or true efficiency of the revenue within the business. And that's kind of the most sophisticated way to view the success of your project.
And I think that brings it back to how we think about now the revenue era. AI chat has to be owned both by marketing and sales, right? If you think about it from how we described it. And at the end of the day, what you just illustrated is a good example of how the marketing team can use it across the website, right? Again, thinking about the who, the where, and the what. They're running campaigns, they're running programs, they typically own the website, so they can deploy this technology across the website. But then that technology is going to get those website visitors either to more of the marketing collateral and content and brand building things that team does really well, or it's going to bring them faster to the sales team, who are going to be great solution, experts and consultants, and get them faster to buying that particular thing. And also, we have some customers that are using it for more transactional purchases too. It doesn't even have to be more of a solution sell, value-based sell. Yeah. It can be transactional, right, Kyle?
100%. Yeah, I mean, B2C e-com is a great use case for this. Because especially for lower ticket purchases, I've got, some customers that the average purchase price on the site is $75. And people ask, a couple of, there's about 6 questions that come up all the time that they ask all the time. If they get an answer, they buy a heck of a lot more.
Let's look at some of these examples. So we have a few different use cases, we would call them. The first one of our favorites is the homepage assistant. So this is where the AI chat experience is going to be on your homepage. Some websites have 10,000, 100,000 people coming to their homepage. It's really hard to sometimes navigate from a website homepage. You're probably sending a lot of your traffic to your homepage. But again, for the visitor, it's hard to find what they're looking for quickly. So Kyle, do you want to walk us through this example? I'm just going to click through the build so we can all read it together at the same time, just because there's a lot going on here. But do you want to walk through it at a high level?
Yeah, so the first thing is you can see in the greeting that we're using the technology to understand who this person is, right? And so it says, "Hey, Sarah," right? Because it's a known cookied user, rather than "Hey there" or something more generic. And so that plays a huge role in just getting more engagement initially. When we look at the way that sorry?
No, I said that's the who, right? It goes back to the framework of designing the conversation. That's the who.
Exactly. And so in the response, it says, "I just opened an e-commerce for my business and researching shipping options." So we understand that this is a relatively young business. And so the dialogue manager in this case recommends a more entry-level caliber product. And they didn't say that, they didn't have to click a button. The idea of I just opened, you know what I mean? That is what, kind of we're reading and interpreting there. And the AI bot is saying like, I just opened, probably wants entry-level type of thing based off of how these conversations have gone in the past. And then that is what we suggest. Now, the customer is not ready to go ahead with the purchase. They want some more information. And so, we're able to deliver a value proposition and then put people in touch or put this customer in touch with the right resource that they're looking for. And to your point, Mark, like this is the primary design cue of a lot of the homepage assistant playbooks. It works the same way with e-commerce, by the way, where if I come to a site, I need to get the information that I'm looking for as quickly as possible. And the challenge is there's 1,500 pages in the sitemap. E-com is the same way, right? I want to find the product that is going to be the best fit for what I truly need. The challenge is you sell 1,000 products. And so how do I get there quickly? And that is what these kind of playbooks are showcasing this example.
I love it. Here's another example, just clicking through it, which is on the pricing page, a very important high value page on most businesses' websites. And how is the AI helping here now for this website visitor? Like what in particular stands out?
Yeah, so in this case, someone asked how much is the price? And almost all businesses, that's going to be too generic of a question to provide a specific answer. And so this is an example of multi-turn AI where we want to learn more about what you truly need before I can make the right recommendation. And so we asked what features are they interested in getting started with. And the playbook, by the way, displays options. Like they could have pressed any number of buttons to better guide us or the bot towards what they're looking for, but they just free text typed ABM solutions. Well, ABM, account-based marketing, that means you're going after large companies. Very small companies very rarely sell to very large companies. And so we can imply that this is a larger organization based off of the fact that previous visitors who talked about ABM tended to want to talk about these pricing options later. So in the response to this free text ABM solutions input, we're able to deliver the right content, also recommend the right plan now, because we can apply this to a larger business and that the features that they would likely be looking for are contained in this place.
Love it. And one more, this is where it's like the AI is just on the website. It's across the website. We call it the website concierge because you can never predict every single thing that a person's going to ask, no matter what page they're on. So it engages with them. Oh, I went too far. It engages with them in a very, open-ended way. Hi, can I ask you a question? So it doesn't know too much about this person. It's probably even like an unknown visitor. And then the visitor though responds with a pretty detailed response, specific question, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we know what this is, we recognize it, and we know that the answer of this is just too complex to get into in the context of a playbook. So we offer the ability to route humans in, where it makes sense, and then qualify that lead and deliver the experience that is right for this person. And again, this is basically a demonstration of the ability to understand proper nouns, and ultimately give people to the experience or information that they're looking for quickly.
I love it. So we'll end there. If you have other questions, folks, let us know. That was a crash course in all of this. Number one, you can get Kyle's course as part of the AI Institute, which goes into great detail in each of those things that he went through. And if you want to get started kind of today, there's examples and more details on some of the stuff we went through in the new conversational marketing blueprint that goes more into that framework of how to both create the conversational experience, but then also to design it so that ultimately it accelerates your revenue, increases your ASP. So there's about, I think, 35 plus use cases that are part of this book that also comes with a free workbook.
You got a slide for that, right, Mark? You have a URL you can send them to?
Oh yeah, here's the slide. Sorry, I thought I was on that slide. I apologize. That's what I was talking about, folks. So check it out. It's brand new. And let us know what you think.
All right, so we just got a few minutes for questions. If you have one, go ahead, either put it in the Q&A or the chat. But I'm gonna kick it off because, so let's say I'm a company. I don't have a chat at all yet. I don't even have just a human-powered chat bot. Is my starting point a human powered chatbot just for basics? Like, is it based on how many visitors I have to my, like, how do I know when it's time for chat or when it's time for smarter AI powered chat? Like, what are the different ways you look at that?
Yeah, this conversation comes up a lot. And I'll talk to folks that, we're like, VPs of marketing at like 1,500 person companies, and they just took a CMO role at a 50-person company, right? And this question will come a lot, like, hey, how do I know and when am I ready? So to answer your question, most businesses will put like, the kind of decision tree bots we've been describing with some human engagement on the site first, and kind of grow into using AI more to like prove the benefit of the channel, and then go the AI route. That being said, it is not technically required. There are a variety of techniques that I've used with customers to capture client utterances, if you will, particularly during off hours, and then using that to build AI. So what we could do, for example, is put a chat prompt on your site off hours, ask people what they're looking for, and let them type whatever they want. And then when they type it, we say, great question. Our team isn't available right now. Why don't you give us an email address and reach out to you in the morning? And that's kind of a fine expectation, I guess, because it's 10 o'clock at night anyway. But then that night or that morning, we'll take everything a customer asked that night and input it into the AI model. And by 10 a.m., we've got a revised AI-based bot that is now, 10 to 20 to 50 questions smarter. And you can do that nightly and get to a kind of weapons grade AI deploy, within a matter of a month.
That was actually a related question. So how much engagement do you need on it for it to learn? Like where is the training data coming from? When you buy from, say, a vendor like Drift, is there anonymized third-party data that helps create the original functionality in this ontology and the clustering? Or is it individually built at a brand level and it learns from that brand over time?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely important that when you're evaluating vendors for this, that you ask like how much proprietary data they're using to build their models. At Drift, we have about 1.5 million chat transcripts that we have analyzed and built a basis that we use and call the base model. And so, for example, like I don't need to learn like how people are gonna ask about the weather on your website. They ask about the same way on every website. Or we have like 53 ways that people have given affirmations, like yes, yeah, sure, why not, whatever. And so we don't need to learn how your customers are going to say that. It might be largely universal. And so we will start with a model that can answer about 50 questions that we know you're going to get based off of the amount of chat volume that Drift has analyzed and annotated in the past. From there, yes, every deploy is customized to the vendor,
I think that's
and not reusable. Yeah,
it's such a critical point, because I think so many times we'll get asked all the time, well, I'm a small business, how can I use AI? Don't you need a ton of data? Doesn't it take like a massive amount of training? Like we don't have the time or resources for that. But your point is, if the vendors are training it on the right data sets, you can start with these base models that can create efficiency right away, even if it's going to take time for it to learn your specific business.
Yeah, and then to answer another part of your question, which is like, how many chats do I need of my own to have this kind of start to represent my brand and my customer needs? It's about 200, and you'll start to see some results.
Okay.
With 200 chats, we can start to do some smart things with AI that will make your customers say, "Wow, that was pretty cool." And then of course, like the more you get, the better it gets. But you don't need a whole ton to get started.
All right, we'll got time for one question. How many intents can you scale to and still be performant?
I mean, theoretically unlimited, right? There's no like, capacity constraints, I guess, into how we process this. There's practical limitations to how we roll that out, based off of, kind of copyright mapping, if you will, or the kind of content alignment sessions. What we'll typically do is tackle, say, a product line at a time, when we're launching with businesses.
Cool. All right, well, we're at the top of the hour. I have a list of about 20 other questions I want to ask you guys. So maybe we'll do a follow-up blog post. But for everybody on the call, we will send out an email tomorrow with access to the deck and the on-demand video. Those will both be accessible moving forward. And reach out to Kyle and Mark, connect with them. And again, if you do join Academy, check out Kyle's course there, and really appreciate your time, guys. This is awesome. I wrote down like 5 interesting things you said, Kyle, about like 45% outside of business hours, 1% of, I mean, I want to follow up with you and ask a bunch of questions.
Yeah,
So,
we'll hang out some more. Joseph,
yeah.
I owe you an answer too. I'll track you down.
All right. Well, thank you again, guys. And thanks everybody that was able to join us today. We'll talk with you again soon.
Thank you, Paul.
Take care.
All right. Bye, guys.